The bright lights of the orbital station Genesis shone against the darkness of space. It was the third week of talks between humans and the newly discovered Xeranian aliens. The huge circular meeting room had large windows that showed Earth below. A blue and green marble floating in black space. Commander Olivia Wright stood with perfect posture at the main table. She was 42 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many late nights of preparation. Her blue uniform was crisp and neat, showing the gold bars of the United Earth Alliance on her shoulders. She looked across at Ambassador Kreltix and tried not to show her frustration. "The human body can adapt to almost any situation," Olivia said firmly. "Our history is full of examples where we survived conditions that should have killed us." Ambassador Kreltix made a sound that the translation devices interpreted as laughter. He was tall and thin with 4 arms and skin that changed colors based on his mood. Right now, it was turning a deep purple shade that the human team had learned. "Meant he felt superior? Your kind requires so much rest," the alien said. His voice came through the translator with a slight buzz. "Xeranians can stay alert and think clearly for much longer periods. Our brains are simply more efficient." Admiral Paul Nelson, the head of the human delegation, shifted in his seat. He was a large man with a gray beard and calm eyes. He knew. This meeting was important. After years of searching the stars, humans had finally found intelligent alien life. These talks would shape how both species work together in the future. The back of the room, Lieutenant Jack Peters tried to focus on the conversation. He was only 28, one of the youngest officers on the diplomatic team. His job was to monitor communications and take notes. Jack had light brown hair that never seemed to stay combed and green eyes that were currently fighting to stay open. He took another sip from his coffee mug, his 3rd cup of the morning. "If I may, Admiral," Jack said before he could stop himself. Everyone turned to look at him, and he instantly regretted speaking up. But it was too late now. "Sorry for interrupting, but I've gone multiple days without sleep before. During my final exams at the Academy, I stayed awake for nearly 3 days straight." The Admiral gave Jack a warning look, but Ambassador Kreltix seemed interested. "3 of your Earth days without any rest cycles?" The alien's skin shifted to a curious blue color. "And you could still perform mental tasks?" Jack nodded. "Yes, sir. With enough coffee, I finished 4 major projects and passed all my tests." The alien turned to his assistants and spoke in their clicking language. The humans couldn't understand what they were saying, but it seemed like an argument. Finally, Kreltix turned back to Admiral Nelson. "This gives me an idea. A simple test to compare our species." The alien's skin now glowed with excitement. "We propose a challenge of endurance. 1 human against 1 Xeranian. 72 hours without sleep while completing regular tests of mental and physical ability." Admiral Nelson frowned. "That kind of sleep deprivation could be dangerous." "Not for Xeranians," Kreltix said proudly. "And based on what your young officer claims, perhaps not for humans either. It would be a fascinating experiment." Commander Olivia stepped closer to the Admiral and spoke quietly. "Sir, this could give us valuable information about Xeranian biology and limits. From a strategic perspective, it's worth considering." The Admiral still looked unsure. "Who would even volunteer for such a thing?" "I will," Jack said, standing up straighter. "I've done something similar before. I know how to manage it." Dr. Susan Miller, the medical officer on the diplomatic team, immediately objected. She was a serious woman in her 50s with gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Absolutely not. Extended sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations, reduced immune function, and cognitive impairment. This is completely unnecessary." Ambassador Kreltix's skin rippled with what seemed like amusement. "Are you afraid your human will lose?" "Doctor, our scientist Vexala has volunteered, and she is one of our finest minds." All eyes turned to where Vexala stood. She was shorter than Kreltix, but had the same 4 arms and color-changing skin, currently a confident gold shade. She bowed slightly to the humans. Admiral Nelson looked torn. He understood the diplomatic importance of this moment. Refusing could make humans appear weak or uncooperative. Accepting could put one of his crew at risk. If we do this, he said slowly, we need clear rules and constant medical monitoring from both species. Of course, Kreltix agreed. And two, make it fair, no artificial stimulants for either participant. Jack quickly spoke up. Sir, if I may, coffee is just a normal drink for humans. It's not what we would consider an artificial stimulant. It's more like ... traditional beverage. The Admiral raised an eyebrow at Jack but turned to the aliens. Lieutenant Peters makes a valid point. Caffeine is a natural part of human diet and culture. It would be like asking your people not to consume your nutrient solutions. After some discussion, the aliens agreed. Vexala could use her standard Zoranian nutrients, and Jack could have his coffee. Both would be monitored by medical teams, and either side could stop the test if health concerns arose. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Dr. Miller pulled Jack aside. Her face showed clear worry. This is crazy, Jack. 72. Ours is pushing human limits, even with caffeine. Jack gave her a confident smile. Don't worry, Doc, I've got a system. Small amounts of coffee spread out works better than large doses all at once. I'll pace myself. The doctor didn't look convinced. This isn't just about staying awake. They'll be testing cognitive function. Your reaction time, memory, problem solving, all of it will suffer. I know the risks, Jack said more seriously now. But think about what we can learn about them. Their stamina, how their minds work under pressure, their physical limits. That's valuable information. From across the room, Admiral Nelson watched. The young lieutenant, he walked over slowly. Peters, are you absolutely sure about this? No one will think less of you if you back out. Jack stood straight and nodded. I'm sure, sir. Let me do this for the team. The Admiral sighed. Very well. The challenge starts tomorrow at 0800 hours. Get a good night's sleep tonight. It'll be your last for a while. As Jack left the meeting room, he saw Vexala watching him with her strange alien eyes. She made a gesture that might have been a greeting or a challenge. It was hard to tell. One thing was clear. The next 3 days would test the limits of human endurance against alien biology. And Jack Peters, with his coffee and determination, was humanity's only representative in this unusual competition. The observation room on Deck 7 of the Genesis station had been transformed overnight. 2 identical testing areas stood on opposite sides of the large space. Each had a comfortable chair, a desk with a computer, and a collection of physical objects. For dexterity tests, medical equipment lined the walls with both human and Zoranian devices blinking and humming. Jack arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a standard blue uniform. He carried a large bag filled with thermoses of coffee. The brewing station in his quarters had been busy all morning as he prepared his supplies for the long challenge ahead. Good morning, Lieutenant, Dr. Miller said as she attached small sensors to his temples and wrists. These will monitor your brain activity, heart rate, and other vital signs. I'll be watching everything closely. Jack nodded as he arranged his coffee supplies on a small table. Don't worry too much, Doc. I've got this down to a science. Small sips every 30 minutes for the first day, then adjust as needed. Across the room, Vexala was being prepared by her medical team. The Zoranian scientist sat perfectly still as several monitoring devices were attached to her color-changing skin. She wore no clothes, as was normal for her species, but had several pouches attached to her upper arms. These contained the nutrient solutions she would consume during the test. Admiral Nelson and Commander Olivia entered the room, followed by Ambassador Kreltix and 3 other Zoranians. The tension in the air was almost visible. Both participants will undergo the same tests. At 4-hour intervals, Admiral Nelson explained. Between tests, you may move around within your designated areas, but you must remain visible at all times. Any signs of sleep, even momentary, will result in immediate disqualification. Ambassador Kreltix's skin flickered with confidence. Vexala is one of our leading neurophysiologists. She has studied sleep patterns across various species. The insights from this challenge will be most valuable. Jack couldn't help feeling a little intimidated. He was just a communications officer who happened to be good at staying awake. But it was too late to back out now. A loud tone sounded, marking 0800 hours. The challenge had officially begun. The first few hours passed easily. Jack felt fresh and alert, completing the initial cognitive tests without difficulty. The tests included memory puzzles, reaction time measurements, and complex math problems. He worked steadily, taking small sips of coffee at planned intervals. Vexala seemed equally comfortable, her movements precise and efficient. Her skin maintained a steady gold color that the humans had learned indicated focus and confidence. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Miller asked during the break after the 4-hour mark. "Fine so far," Jack replied, stretching his arms. "This is the easy part. Talk to me again at hour 30. At the 8-hour mark, the physical tests began. These included assembling small objects while wearing gloves, balancing tasks, and tests of fine motor control. Again, both participants performed well, though the humans noted that Vexala seemed particularly skilled with her 4 arms, giving her an advantage on dexterity tasks. As the 12-hour mark approached, Jack began to feel the first real waves of tiredness. It wasn't serious, yet just the normal feeling of needing sleep after being awake all day. He increased his coffee intake slightly, careful not to overdo it. Vexala still showed no signs of fatigue. She worked through her tests methodically, occasionally consuming small amounts from her nutrient pouches. "Their physiology is fascinating," Dr. Miller commented quietly to Commander Olivia. "Her neural patterns are different from ours, more compartmentalized. It might allow her to rest certain parts of her brain while keeping others active." The 16-hour mark came and went. Outside the observation room, crew members from both species gathered to watch through the large windows. Word of the unusual challenge had spread throughout the station, and many were curious to see how it would unfold. As night fell, or what passed for night on a space station with artificial day cycles, Jack felt his first serious challenge. His body clock was telling him it was time to sleep. He had expected this and was prepared. He stood up and began walking around his area, doing light exercises to keep his blood flowing. "Keep moving," he muttered to himself. "Get through the wall." Across the room, Vexala remained seated, but her skin had darkened slightly to a deeper orange. The Zeranian medical team watched her closely but didn't seem concerned. The 20-hour mark brought more difficult tests. Jack had to solve logic puzzles while recalling sequences of numbers. His performance was still good, but not as sharp as earlier. Vexala continued to excel, though the humans noticed her movements had slowed very slightly. "She's good," Jack admitted during a break, sipping his coffee. "Really good." Dr. Miller checked his vital signs. "Your cortisol levels are elevated, but that's expected." "How's the caffeine working?" "So far, so good." "I'm spacing it out carefully." At the 24-hour mark, a full day without sleep, both participants underwent full medical evaluations. Jack's reaction times had slowed by about 12%, and his short-term memory showed some decline. Vexala's results remained closer to her baseline, though there were subtle changes in her neural patterns. "The human is performing better than expected," one of the Zeranian doctors noted to Ambassador Kreltix. "Their adaptability is impressive." The ambassador's skin flickered with annoyance. "Vexala is still superior. Look at the cognitive test results." The second night was when things became truly difficult for Jack. Around the 30-hour mark, he hit what marathon runners call the wall, a point where the body strongly demands rest. His hands trembled slightly as he poured his coffee, and he had to concentrate intensely during the tests. Vexala was finally showing clear signs of fatigue as well. Her skin had dulled to a pale orange, and she occasionally paused during tasks, seeming to lose her train of thought. "Both participants are experiencing significant fatigue," Dr. Miller reported to Admiral Nelson. "But neither shows signs of giving up?" The Admiral nodded thoughtfully. "What are we learning from their patterns of decline?" "The Zeranian's performance is dropping more suddenly, while Jack's is a more gradual descent. It suggests different neural strategies for handling sleep deprivation." As the 36-hour mark approached a day and a half without sleep, Jack felt strangely calm. He had pushed through the worst of the second wall and entered a state of altered awareness. Things seemed slightly unreal, but he could still focus when needed. He looked across at Vexala and noticed. Her normally smooth movements had become jerky and uncoordinated. Her skin color shifted unpredictably between orange and a dull gray. One of the Zoranian doctors approached Ambassador Kreltix with concern. They spoke quietly in their language, but Jack could see from their gestures that they were worried about Vexala's condition. "Halfway there?" Jack murmured to himself as he prepared for the next round of tests. The real question was who would break first, the human with his coffee or the alien who had never expected to be challenged this way. The world had become strange for Jack as he entered the 40th hour without sleep. Colors seemed too bright. Sounds echoed oddly in his ears. The edges of objects appeared to blur when he wasn't focusing directly on them. He knew these were normal effects of sleep deprivation. His academy training had prepared him for these symptoms, but knowing about them didn't make them any less unsettling. Jack carefully poured his 20th cup of coffee. His hands shook slightly, making small drops splash onto the table. He had switched to a weaker brew to avoid the jitters that too much caffeine would cause. The trick wasn't drinking more coffee, but drinking it at the right times to keep his energy stable. Across the room, Vexala was struggling more visibly now. The Zoranian scientist's movements had become stiff and awkward. Her skin color shifted randomly between dull gray and sickly yellow. Several times, she had to restart simple tasks after losing track of what she was doing. The room had grown more crowded as word spread throughout the station. Both human and Zoranian crew members watched through the observation windows. Some even placed unofficial bets on who would last longer. 40 hours, Dr. Miller announced as she checked Jack's vital signs. Your blood pressure is elevated and your glucose metabolism is irregular. These are expected symptoms, but I'm concerned. Jack gave her a tired smile. I'm fine, Doc. I've found my rhythm now. It wasn't entirely true. Jack felt terrible. His eyes burned, his joints ached. His thoughts kept slipping away mid-sentence, but he also felt a strange determination. Each time he looked at Vexala, he saw that she was suffering too. Maybe even more than he was. The 40-hour test battery was particularly challenging. It included a three-dimensional puzzle that required spatial reasoning, exactly the kind of thinking that suffered most during sleep deprivation. Jack worked slowly but methodically, forcing himself to check each move twice before committing. Vexala struggled with the same puzzle. Her four hands, usually so coordinated, now seemed to work against each other. She dropped pieces and had to start over. Multiple times. The Zoranian is showing significant neural pattern disruption, one of the human scientists noted to Commander Olivia. Their brain structure is different from ours. It seems they don't have the same compensation mechanisms we do. Admiral Nelson nodded thoughtfully. So humans actually have an advantage in sleep deprivation? It appears that way, the scientist replied. We evolved on a planet with regular day-night cycles, but also developed the ability to push through when necessary. For hunting, for caring for young, for keeping watch against predators, the Zoranians evolved differently. At the 44-hour mark, something unexpected happened. Vexala suddenly stood up, her skin flashing bright red. She began making rapid clicking sounds that her translation device couldn't process. Two Zoranian doctors rushed to her side, speaking urgently in their language. Jack watched with concern through his exhaustion. Despite the competition, he didn't want to see the alien scientists suffer. Ambassador Kreltix approached Admiral Nelson with obvious worry. Vexala is experiencing neural pathway strain. This is unexpected. Our research suggested she could maintain consciousness for at least 60 hours. Should we stop the test? The Admiral asked. The ambassador's skin darkened with what might have been embarrassment. Let us monitor her for now. She is still functioning, just less efficiently than anticipated. The 48-hour mark? 2 full days without sleep brought a comprehensive medical evaluation for both participants. Jack's cognitive function had declined by almost 30%. His reaction times were slow, and his memory tests showed significant gaps. But he was still alert and able to complete all tasks, albeit slowly. Vexala's results were worse. Her cognitive decline measured at nearly 50%. Her once precise movements were now clumsy and uncoordinated. The Xeranian medical team huddled around their equipment, speaking in worried tones. "Two-thirds of the way there," Jack mumbled to himself as he sipped his coffee. "Just one more day." He had found a strange second wind. After pushing through the worst fatigue around hour 40, his body seemed to have accepted that sleep wasn't coming and had entered a new state, not exactly alertness, but a kind of numb functionality. "Your resilience is remarkable," Dr. Miller told him during a break, "but don't get overconfident." "Hours 50 to 60 are typically when hallucinations begin," Jack nodded slowly. "I know. I'm watching for it." By hour 50, the observation room had become the main attraction on the station. Off-duty crew members from both species crowded the viewing area. The test had become more than a scientific experiment. It was now a contest of wills. And biology, Vexala's condition continued to deteriorate. During the 52-hour test, she stopped mid-task and stared blankly at the wall for nearly a minute before one of her doctors spoke to her. She seemed confused about where she was and what she was supposed to be doing. "Her neural pathways are becoming disorganized," a Xeranian doctor explained to the human medical team. "Our brains are more specialized than yours. Each region has specific functions with less overlap. It makes us efficient but less adaptable to stress." Jack wasn't doing great either. During the same test, he found himself unable to remember the instructions just seconds after hearing them. He had to ask for them to be repeated 3 times. When trying to complete a simple sequence of numbers, he kept mixing up the order. At hour 54, Jack began seeing movement in the corners of his vision, shadows that vanished when he turned to look at them. He knew these were mild hallucinations and tried to ignore them. "You're seeing things that aren't there, aren't you?" Dr. Miller asked quietly. Jack nodded. "Just shadows. Nothing specific yet. Let me know if it gets worse." At hour 56, the crisis came. Vexala was attempting a simple dexterity test, moving small objects from one container to another. Suddenly, her skin flashed bright white, a color the humans had never seen on a Xeranian before. She made a high-pitched keening sound and collapsed to the floor. The Xeranian medical team rushed to her side. Their movements were urgent as they attached additional monitoring devices to her. Trembling form, Ambassador Kreltix hurried over to Admiral Nelson, his skin a pale blue that indicated distress. "We must withdraw Vexala from the test. Her neural pathways are experiencing cascading failure. If we continue, she may suffer permanent damage." The Admiral nodded gravely. "Of course. Her health takes priority over any challenge." The Xeranian team carefully lifted Vexala onto a stretcher. As they carried her out, her eyes briefly met Jack's across the room. There was something like respect in that alien gaze. Jack stood unsteadily, watching them leave. Despite his exhaustion, he felt no triumph, only concern for the alien scientist and a strange sense of revelation about the differences between their species. "Do you want to continue, Lieutenant?" Admiral Nelson asked. "With Vexala's withdrawal, you've technically won the challenge." Jack considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No, sir. I'll continue to the full 72 hours as planned. This isn't just about winning anymore. It's about understanding our limits." The Admiral nodded with approval. "Very well. 16 more hours to go." Jack poured another cup of coffee with shaking hands. The real test was just beginning. The observation room felt emptier after Vexala left. Jack sat alone at his testing station, surrounded by coffee cups and monitoring equipment. The challenge had changed. It was no longer human versus alien, but Jack versus himself. Hour 58 brought a strange calm. Jack had moved beyond ordinary tiredness into something else entirely. His body felt disconnected, like he was floating slightly above himself. Colors seemed too bright, and sounds had an echo that wasn't really there. He knew these were effects of extreme sleep deprivation, but knowing didn't make them less real. "How are you holding up?" Dr. Miller asked as she checked his vital signs. For the 15th time that day. I'm still here, Jack said with a tired smile. How's Vexala doing? Stable? The Xeranian medical team has her in their version of intensive care. They're optimistic about her recovery, but they're surprised by what happened. Jack nodded slowly. Each movement of his head felt heavy and required conscious effort. Their brains work differently than ours. More efficient in some ways, but less flexible. Commander Olivia entered the observation room, walking directly to Jack's station. She looked at the young lieutenant with a mixture of concern and respect. You don't need to continue, Peters. You've already proven your point by outlasting Vexala. Jack shook his head carefully. With respect, Commander, I want to finish what I started. 72 hours was the challenge. I'll do all 72 hours. Olivia studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. But Dr. Miller has full authority to stop this if your health is at risk. Understood, ma'am. As hour 60 approached, Jack faced his greatest challenge yet. The hallucinations were becoming more vivid. Shadows in the corners now had shapes. Sometimes he thought he heard voices whispering just at the edge of his hearing. He knew none of it was real, but the knowledge didn't make the experiences less unsettling. During the cognitive tests, Jack had to read each question multiple times to understand it. Simple math problems that he could normally solve instantly now required careful thought. When asked to remember a sequence of 5 numbers, he could only recall 3 correctly. Your performance is declining at the expected rate, one of the scientists told him. Actually, slightly better than expected for someone awake this long. Jack gave a tired laugh. Is that supposed to make me feel better? The station's mess hall had prepared a special meal for him, foods high in protein and complex carbohydrates to help sustain his energy. But eating was difficult. His sense of taste had dulled, and everything felt dry in his mouth. At hour 62, Admiral Nelson returned to the observation room. He brought surprising news. The Xeranian High Council has contacted us directly, the Admiral said. They're extremely interested in the results of this challenge. Apparently, their species has never documented consciousness beyond 60 hours. Your performance is causing quite a stir. Jack tried to focus on the Admiral's words, but they seemed to slip in and out of his comprehension. Are they angry that a human outlasted one of their scientists? Quite the opposite. They're fascinated. They want to understand how humans can endure such prolonged wakefulness. It could lead to significant scientific cooperation. That gave Jack a small boost of motivation. If his suffering was actually helping human-Xeranian relations, maybe it was worth it. Hour 64 brought the most difficult physical test yet. Jack had to assemble a complex 3-dimensional puzzle while reciting a series of words backward. His hands fumbled with the pieces, and he kept losing his place in the word sequence. I don't think I can do this one, he admitted after his 3rd failed attempt. Just do your best, Dr. Miller encouraged him. No one expects perfection at this point. The observation windows were constantly filled with faces now. Off-duty crew members from both species watched with fascination as the human continued his lonely battle against sleep. Some brought signs with encouraging messages. Others simply stared in disbelief that anyone could remain conscious for so long. At hour 66, Ambassador Kreltix returned to the observation room. His skin was a respectful shade of deep blue as he approached Jack. Lieutenant Peters, your endurance honors both our species. Vexala has regained consciousness and asked me to convey her respect for your achievement. Jack tried to stand to greet the ambassador properly, but his legs wobbled dangerously. He sat back down quickly. Thank you, Ambassador. Please tell Vexala I look forward to discussing our different experiences when this is over. The alien made a gesture that the translation system identified as agreement. We have much to learn from each other, it seems. As hour 68 approached, Jack entered what marathon runners call the tunnel. The world narrowed to just him and the next test, the next cup of coffee, the next minute to endure. Everything else faded away. His hallucinations were constant. Now, the walls seemed to breathe slightly. Occasionally, he thought he saw people who weren't really there standing in the corners of the room. Once, he had a brief but vivid conversation with his academy roommate before realizing no one was actually there. "You're experiencing expected perceptual distortions," Dr. Miller reminded him when he reported seeing stars floating in the air. "Try to focus on concrete objects and tasks." Hour 70 brought a surprise visitor. Vexala, supported by two Zoranian medical assistants, entered the observation room. She looked weak, her skin a pale gray color, but she was conscious and alert. She approached Jack's station slowly. "I wish to observe the final stages of your challenge," she said through her translator. Her voice sounded tired even through the electronic device. "Your species possesses remarkable adaptability." Jack tried to focus on the alien scientist, but her outlines seemed to blur and shift. "Your species has its own strengths. You performed better than me for the first 40 hours. Vexala made a gesture that might have been agreement. "Different evolutionary paths, different strengths. This is why exchange between our species is valuable." The final 2 hours were the strangest of all. Jack felt like he was floating in and out of reality. Time stretched and compressed unpredictably. 1 minute seemed to last an hour, then suddenly, 30 minutes had passed in what felt like seconds. Dr. Miller stayed by his side constantly now, monitoring his vital signs and speaking to him regularly to keep him grounded in reality. "Just focus on my voice," she said when he became disoriented during the 71st hour. "You're almost there." 1 more hour. The final hour was counted down on a large digital display that everyone in the room could see. As the minutes ticked away, more and more people gathered to witness the end of the unprecedented endurance test. When the clock showed just 5 minutes remaining, Admiral Nelson, Commander Olivia, and Ambassador Kreltix all stood at the front of the crowd. Even the Zoranian medical team had returned to observe the conclusion. Jack focused all his remaining energy on staying awake for those final minutes. Each second felt like a separate battle against his body's desperate need for sleep. The final countdown was chanted by everyone in the room. 10, 9, 8, ... Jack fixed his eyes on the clock, willing it to move faster. ... 3, 2, 1. A loud tone sounded, marking exactly 72 hours since the challenge began. The room erupted in cheers from both humans and Zoranians. Jack tried to stand to acknowledge the applause, but his legs gave way completely. Dr. Miller and two medical assistants caught him before he hit the floor. "It's over," Dr. Miller said, supporting his weight. "You did it, Jack. 72 hours without sleep." Jack managed a tired smile before the world finally, mercifully faded to black as his body claimed the rest it had been denied for 3 full days. Jack slept for 19 hours straight. His body and mind desperately needed to recover from the extreme test he had put them through. The medical team monitored him constantly, making sure his brain patterns returned to normal as he cycled through. A deep sleep his body craved. When he finally opened his eyes, he was in the medical bay of the Genesis station. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. His mouth felt dry, and his head ached dully. "Welcome back to the world of the conscious," Dr. Miller said as she noticed he was awake. She stood from her desk and came to. "Check his vital signs. How do you feel?" Jack considered this for a moment. "Like I've been hit by a shuttlecraft, twice." The doctor smiled. "That's to be expected. Your body is still recovering from extreme sleep deprivation. The good news is that all your readings are returning to normal, no permanent damage." Jack slowly sat up, feeling every muscle in his body protest. "How long was I out?" 19 hours. You earned every minute of it." As Dr. Miller helped Jack sit up properly, the door to the medical bay slid open. Admiral Nelson and Commander Olivia entered, followed by Ambassador Kreltix. The Zoranian skin was a calm blue color that indicated respect. "Lieutenant Peters," the Admiral said with a smile. "Good to see you awake. How are you feeling?" "Better than I expected, sir," Jack replied, trying to sound more alert than he felt. "How's Vexala doing?" The ambassador's skin rippled with what might have been surprise at Jack's concern. "She has recovered well. Zoranian neural systems can repair themselves quickly once rest is allowed. She is eager to discuss the experience." With you when you are fully recovered. The Admiral pulled up a chair next to Jack's bed. What you did has had quite an impact, Lieutenant. The Xoranian High Council is extremely interested in human endurance capabilities. They've proposed a joint research project to study the differences between our species. Commander Olivia nodded. Your 72 hours without sleep has done more for human-Xoranian relations than weeks of formal negotiations. Jack hadn't expected this. He had just been trying to prove a point and maybe learn something about alien biology. The idea that his coffee-fueled endurance test might have diplomatic importance was surprising. The medical data we collected is fascinating, Dr. Miller added. Xoranian brains are more specialized than ours, with distinct regions for specific functions. They're more efficient in many ways, but less adaptable under stress. Human brains are more flexible, Ambassador Kreltic said, searching for the right word. You can reroute neural pathways when certain areas are impaired by fatigue. We cannot do this to the same degree, probably because humans evolved having to stay awake to watch for predators, Jack suggested, remembering his academy biology classes. Those who could push through sleep deprivation survived. The ambassador's skin flickered with interest. A fascinating theory. This is exactly the kind of comparative evolutionary biology we wish to explore. 3 days later, Jack was fully recovered and back on duty. The Genesis station was buzzing with talk of the endurance challenge. Jack couldn't walk through the corridors without crew members, stopping to congratulate him or ask questions about his experience. The observation room had been converted back to its original purpose, but Jack still felt a strange connection to the space when he passed by it. For 3 days, it had been the entire world to him. He was on his way to the communications center when he received a message asking him to report to Conference Room 3. When he arrived, he found Vexala waiting for him. The Xoranian scientist looked fully recovered, her skin a healthy gold color. "Lieutenant Peters," she said through her translator, "I am pleased to see you well." "Likewise," Jack replied, genuinely happy to see the alien scientist recovered. "I was worried about you when you collapsed." Vexala made a gesture that the translation system interpreted as appreciation. "I have been analyzing our comparative medical data. Your performance was remarkable by any species standards." Jack smiled. "I had help from caffeine. Lots of it. Even so, your neural adaptability is impressive. My species could not have achieved what you did." They spent the next hour discussing their experiences. Vexala explained how Xoranian consciousness worked differently from human consciousness. Their brains were more efficient but less resilient under extreme conditions. Humans, with their more flexible neural pathways, could adapt to sleep deprivation better. "Our two species complement each other," Vexala concluded. "Where one is weak, the other is strong." As their meeting ended, Ambassador Kreltix and Admiral Nelson joined them. The ambassador's skin was an excited yellow-green color. "The High Council has approved our proposal," Kreltix announced. "A joint research station dedicated to comparative biology and medicine. Both our species will benefit from what we learn from each other," the Admiral nodded. "And Lieutenant Peters and scientist Vexala will be among the first team members. If they're willing," Jack looked at Vexala in surprise. "I'm just a communications officer. I'm not a scientist." "But you have first-hand experience that no other human has," the Admiral explained. "Your insights would be valuable, and we can arrange for additional training in xenobiology." Jack thought about it for only a moment before nodding. "I'd be honored, sir." That evening, Jack sat in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. He held a cup of coffee, though he had cut back significantly since the challenge. He still enjoyed the taste, but he didn't need it to stay awake anymore. Commander Olivia found him there and sat down beside him. "Thinking about your new assignment?" Jack nodded. "It's not what I expected when I volunteered for that challenge. I thought I was just proving a point about human endurance." "You did more than that," Olivia said. "You showed that our differences don't have to divide us. They can bring us together, help us learn from each other." Jack smiled as he took a sip of his coffee. Who would have thought that not sleeping for 3 days could lead to all this? That's often how the most important discoveries happen, Olivia replied. Someone does something that seems impossible, and suddenly we all see the world differently. As Jack continued looking out at the stars, he thought about what might come next. Humans and Xoranians working together, learning from each other's strengths and weaknesses. And it had all started because of an argument and too much caffeine. The Genesis station continued its slow orbit around Earth. Inside, two species that had evolved on planets light years apart were finding common ground. And Jack Peters, with his coffee and his stubborn endurance, had helped make it possible. He had stayed awake for 72 hours, but what he had helped create might last for generations. As he finished his coffee, Jack decided that was worth every minute of lost sleep.